His father? What the f he talking about? I ain't to talk about. Cause if you talking, you lying. And I ain't got time for that no more. I ain't got time for you.
Home Sweet Home wasn't exactly as welcoming as its green light to the return of South Jamaica Queens in the 90s. There's a masking complex interplay of family dynamics, not just with the Thomas family, but also with Unique and Ronnie. Their shifting loyalties and the relentless demands of the streets are as high as they've always been. The Thomas family have to grapple with the aftermath of the coordinated attack from the mob, from law enforcement, and the reshaping of their relationships. Each one of them find themselves at a bit of a crossroad, where they're all trying to forge their own path. But in forging their own paths, loose ends do have to be tied up, and they were ruthlessly dealt with to say the least. This was a chilling reminder of the stark reality that the streets can unravel anybody's identity and into something that is unrecognizable, but who's to blame? The older Kanan's narration told us that ultimately the onus rests on the shoulders of those who choose their path, and where pulling the trigger does become a self-reflection of one's choices and actions in Raising Kanan, Season 3. Now, Season 3 kicks off straight after the Italian mob's coordinated attack on Rock, Marvin, Lou, and Unique. We have Marvin, who many may thought may not make it to Season 3, but it is going to take a lot more than just a single bullet to bring him down. As he was driven by Demo, the older Kane's narration gave us a chilling reminder of what just happened at the end of Season 2, but where our characters now find themselves at this moment in time. His narration captured the harsh and volatile realities of the streets, while the opening scene set the tone after the smoke cleared, and where it gave them a moment of clarity from the chaos. The Thomas family had a lot to be grateful for, because not everybody survives an attack like they just did, and in this moment, you can't help but feel a huge sense of relief. However, this line introduces a huge shift in tone, happy bullshit, because that's all it is. When the harsh realities of the aftermath quickly sinks in, you ain't gonna be too happy for too long. Finally, the aftermath, putting your shit together again, is where our characters need to pull themselves together and address the aftermath of the chaos. For some, they want out the street game. For others, they turn to alcohol. But in the immediate aftermath for the Thomases, it's dealing with law enforcement, dealing with their product, getting their story straight, and just surviving to fight another day. With Rock, we pick up with her in hospital on the phone to Lou. She tells him to blame Crown because a dead man can't defend himself. But already at the start of Season 3, we get the hint law enforcement are going to be playing a major role this season. There are cops everywhere from the streets to the hospital and bulletproof records. Both Rock and Lou were being questioned over and over again, but they stuck to the same story. It all goes back to Crown. The story was they put some money into the music business, but they didn't know he was deep in trouble with the wrong kind of people. The detective also mentioned Baisley Park and the South Jamaica houses, which of course was Rock's sophisticated drug empire she built between Seasons 1 and throughout Seasons 2. But that was also put on Crown, backed by Detective Howard. As Rock and Lou's stories matched up, and while the captain and his detectives were speaking about the fallout from the night, in comes Detective Beck, and of course, Kanan did have to hide his face after what he just did to Beck. She says everything that went down tonight would somehow link back to Howard and his lies, but the captain seems to have had enough of Beck's bullshit, which goes all the way back to Seasons 1 and 2.
I wasn't investigating Howard, sir. I was just pitching in.
That is it, detective. Your first, last, and final warning.
Beck was warned time and time again to stay in her lane, and now she found herself suspended. From the captain's point of view, he had enough shit to deal with. Sacristano being found guilty of manufacturing evidence is a bad look for law enforcement, and so the last thing they needed after the night they just had is a cop questioning another cop. Now look, let's look at this from Beck's perspective. She just wants justice, and her investigation actually checks out. She connected the dots around how Howard had a relationship with Rock when she was 16, how she was working as his CI, and how he led them to having a son, Kanan Stark. She also pieced the puzzle of how Kanan was the one who shot Howard, and so he was right. If she did stay in her lane, she would make good police. Unfortunately, it was too little too late. Now, at the hospital there was also Jukebox and Kanan, who was only there for appearance's sake. But this is what I want to focus on. This news reporter gave us a lowdown on a dirty NYPD officer who goes by the name Ralph Sacristano. He was found guilty of manufacturing evidence against at least 10 people, and Ronnie Mathis is one of them. However, before Season 3 I questioned who are the other 9 men that have been released, and will we see or hear about any more? Power always do this where they leave small breadcrumbs for us at the beginning of a series or a season, and later hitting us when we least expect it, so that's just a thought around a subplot that is definitely worth keeping in mind. Now, just to conclude the night, it was home sweet home for Ronnie, or was it? The older Kane's narration gave us a breakdown of who he is and what we can expect. He's the guy around the way you try and stay clear of, because he's so wild and fucked up. He's that guy. He's been in prison for 3 years, but he's in no mood to give his younger brother some love. He just took one look at Unique, carried on eating his Cheerios and watched TV. He's emotionless, doesn't talk much, but he's very observant and attentive to detail. He took one look at Unique and noticed the bloodstains on his sleeve, and he knew Unique was bullshitting when he said he scratched his hand on his car door. You can't bullshit a bullshitter. Now, is Unique happy that his big brother is back home? He probably is, but no doubt there's probably some part of him that isn't. Not only did we see this frosty reunion, but we can also look at other examples across the Power universe, which tells us family members who come out of prison normally create havoc. And Ronnie Mathis, he is going to be an absolute menace. Now, the morning after the chaos, we pick up with Stefano and Sal Baselli. Stefano wasn't happy that Sal caused a hell of a shitstorm at the end of season 2, and he was also paranoid that the place was bugged. Again, highlighting the fact that law enforcement's presence is going to be heavy in season 3. Now, Sal wanted to apologize about what happened in Queens the night before, but Stefano didn't want to hear his apology. Because of his actions, cops were everywhere. So Stefano told him to stay on the other side of the river out in New Jersey. And so having said that, I do think Sal's story is coming to an end. I think that's the job that Stefano made reference to in the trailer in conversation with Rock. So at this moment in time, in my opinion, Sal Baselli will be on the chopping block. Now, with the Thomas family, the older Kane's narration told us at the beginning, everybody will have to come to terms with their situation after many of them escaped near death. Lou was at Bulletproof Records as he looked at the bloodstain on the floor, which was Ziza's, and it actually painted a different picture. Rock said it at the end of season 1, the record label was anything but clean. Lou said it come from blood money, and so Bulletproof Records was always tainted, and it would always get caught in the crossfire just like a regular civilian. For the rest of the Thomas family, it wasn't exactly home sweet home either. Kanan doesn't live at Rock's new house, and Marvin had to go back to doing something he learned from Renee in season 2. It also gave us a reminder, he's still learning to try and control that anger of his, and it is still a work in progress. Now, this scene with the Thomas family sitting at the dinner table is something that we're all familiar with in the Power universe. One of the most iconic moments in recent times was Diana blowing up the Tejada secrets in Go season 2. But for the Thomas family, they had a lot to talk about, and first on the agenda was Kenya. Now, we didn't know how Duke would take Kenya's death, and she is hurt, you could definitely tell. Rock told her that Kenya was hurting for leaving her, but not coming back to find her, and for everything that she did when they did find each other, and Marvin did echo what Rock said. Despite what Kenya did, she did love Duke, and Kenya did probably come try and right some wrongs. Unfortunately, she just found herself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, second on the agenda was Rock's next move. She said she's now out of the game because she's now beginning to realize the life that they've been living costs a lot more than she's willing to pay, so she's out. However, that doesn't change her relationship with Kanan, and this is where we got a scene very similar to the Tejadas, the secret of Kanan's real father, which really took Marvin by surprise. Now outside, Duke asked Kanan to give Rock one more chance, but he doesn't buy into a bullshit story where she said she's out the game. For someone like Rock, she doesn't just need the game, she is the game. And I couldn't agree more with Kanan. There will always be something that pulls her back in, and when she is back, best believe, she's gonna be as ruthless as ever. Now, talking of Rock wanting out the game, Lou wasn't happy because when he said he was out, she said she owns him.
You're done and you're gonna walk away. It's just noise, Lou. Shit that you say to make yourself believe something gonna happen that ain't never gonna happen.
Now look, as much as I say you can never escape this life, and how much Lou was deluded to think he could in seasons 1 and 2, I can see where he's coming from. Rock is definitely a hypocrite for now wanting out this life. He also let Marvin know how it is, including how Scrap wasn't a snitch. Scrap may have not been 100% honest because he had a gambling addiction, but he didn't have to die, and that kill was definitely a mistake. Scrappy really was a ride or die for the Thomas family. He did whatever Rock asked for him, he lost an eye and a kidney for them, and he still remained loyal. So this one was for Scrap. At the end of season 3, every one of the Thomas family are trying to forge their own path. With Duke, some of the questions we all have is, when did Duke decide to become a cop? Why did she move to DC? And why did she change her surname? At school, she was talking to an advisor who told her she could join the military, but Duke said she wanted to sing. And this is my issue with advisors and teachers. Sometimes nobody can see your vision but you, and you can't let anybody tell you whether you can or can't achieve what you want. The same goes for Duke. We all know she's not going to make it as a singer, but let's see how and why. At Famous's crib, we saw a tale of two opposites. If Famous' mother gave him an opportunity to move back in, he'd jump at the chance, but not Kanan. He's different because of Rock. Kanan's also a hustler, and Famous said he isn't built for that life. However, sometimes your circumstances dictate who you have to become, and hustling was their only choice. Now, we saw Kanan and Famous approaching Simrad, which was met with rejection, but this isn't going to stop Kanan from doing his thing. If you can't get product from Simrad, then there will always be another connect and he will find a way. Two characters that will try and stop Kanan in his tracks will be Howard and Rock. As they met, Howard told Rock how law enforcement were behind their story about Crown, but the conversation soon turned to Kanan. Howard laid it out for Rock. She's messed with his head so much he doesn't know up from down, and it is true. Just imagine being in Kanan's shoes during seasons 1 and 2. Sure, he didn't help himself at times with stupidity like Buck 20, the blue caps and so on, but Rock really did fuck with his head. Now, as Rock and Howard came to meet Kanan, Rock gave Famous some money to get out the apartment, and I think we all know Famous isn't gonna go get no pizza. He's gonna smoke that money away. Simrad said it earlier, Famous was a fiend, so let's keep our eyes on whether Famous has what it takes the deeper they get into the game. Now, Rock and Howard were here to warn Kanan to make sure they were on the same page, but Kanan was right with what he said. They were definitely not on the same side when Rock sent Kanan to put Howard down, who at the time didn't know he was shooting his father. But as they exchanged warnings, Kanan had more to get off his chest. Beck knew way too much. She pulled up on both Rock and Howard in season 2, so she was beginning to be a problem, and Kanan knew it. He told Howard it doesn't matter if she's suspended or not, she knows way too much, and he knew what had to be done, which was cold from Kanan. Now, speaking of manipulation from Rock, two characters who definitely are on the same page when it comes to Rock is Lou and Kanan. Lou also had a lot to get off his chest, and it wasn't the alcohol that was talking either. Killing D-Wiz has weighed heavy on his shoulders ever since season 1. It really has been eating him up for a very long time, and he finally came clean to Kanan that it was him who pulled the trigger. For Lou, he didn't have a choice, and look, someone did have to pay for what Kanan and D-Wiz did to Buck 20. If it wasn't going to be D-Wiz, then it was going to be Kanan. So Rock made a choice, and it was a consequence of Kanan's actions. But as Lou said in episode 1, he was done with Rock, and so was Kanan. Now, with Jukebox's story, Kenya left a box full of things for her daughter, and Marvin let her know that they were having a memorial for her at the church, and if she wanted to go, Marvin would go with her. But this really was raw emotion. She was definitely hurting. But at the same time, this will only bring Marvin and Duke a lot more closer. Now, the deeper we've got into the Power universe, the more we've begun to understand. Just because they kill a character, it doesn't necessarily mean they're dead. Some characters leave a long-lasting impact. Sometimes it's through letters or inheritance. It could be a box of belongings and so on. And the same goes for Kenya. Sure, she definitely did Duke wrong in season 2. She left her when she was a kid, but I think she knew she made a mistake. And despite her treatment of Duke, you could definitely tell Duke was hurting from yet another loss. Now, with Ronnie and Unique, they were driving around the neighborhood, and Ronnie noticed how the corners were looking pretty empty. Before he went inside 3 years ago, they had people posted up on every single corner getting paid. But this is where I do agree with Unique. Times have definitely changed, and there are a lot of cops on the streets at this moment in time, especially because of what happened with the Italians. Now, Ronnie's response was if the police messed with them, he stayed one step ahead. And so you get the sense that Ronnie is a very calculated character, a chess player who's always observing the chessboard and everything around him. You can also tell that Unique does feel a bit of unease now that Ronnie's out. He knows who his brother is, but there's also an element of unpredictability because you don't know how prison changes a person, and you can definitely tell there is conflict brewing between the two. Panessa was also worried about the trouble that Ronnie brings. Morella's apparently left behind a son and a daughter, and she didn't want the same happening to her, but Unique tells her that he's got her, he won't let anything bad happen, all while heading straight over to Rock's. Now, this was something that was teased by Sasha Penn post-season 2, this romantic relationship between Unique and Rock. And it is very interesting because Unique's keeping secrets from both Ronnie and Rock. He hasn't told Ronnie about him helping Rock, and he hasn't told Rock about Ronnie being back in town. So I do wonder who's going to be the first to find out. Will it be Ronnie who finds out about Unique and Rock, or will it be Rock who finds out that Ronnie is back? And what are the consequences going to be? Now, over to arguably the moment of episode 1, Detective Beck. After her suspension, Beck's father got the word that Shannon was suspended pending an IAD investigation, and she was in big trouble. She didn't just risk losing her job, but she could also end up in prison. Beck's problem was that she was still caught up on Howard when in reality, she was the one who was under investigation, not Howard. But that's the problem, not just in Raising Kanan, but also in real life. There's all these cover-ups to mask wrongdoings elsewhere, and unfortunately, there has to be collateral damage somewhere. In this instance, it was Beck, but it was about to get a whole lot worse. During her meeting, she learned the true extent of IAD's investigation. It was around her relationship with young girls, specifically Raquel Thomas, aka Jukebox. Let's not forget in seasons 1 and 2, she helped her out twice, and Beck really didn't have a leg to stand on, albeit she didn't do too much wrong. To make matters worse, a dinner foil who was Berg's girlfriend was being questioned because of her connection to Berg, and she had enough and ended their relationship. Now, if you didn't get the sense of what was going to happen to Berg before, then this definitely should have rang alarm bells. Berg was losing everything and everybody around her, and the walls really were closing in. After Kanan told Howard that Berg knows the score, he knew what needed to be done. However, I do get the feeling that Howard did want to give her one last opportunity to kind of drop everything. Earlier he told the captain that if she stayed in her lane, she would make good police, and again, during their meeting Howard did say he could put a word in to save her job, but Berg's problem was she knew way too much, and Howard knew she was never going to stop. The moment she told Howard exactly what she knew, Howard knew exactly what he had to do. Howard isn't just police, he's from the streets, and so he crosses every single T and dots every single I. He finds out that Berg was recording him and takes a tape recorder. He pulled the trigger on the side of the head and put the gun in her hand to make it look like a suicide, and then he wiped down any prints, so this death will go down as a suicide. A woman who just lost her job, someone who had IAD on her case, someone who just lost a girlfriend and had nothing else to live for, and as the older Kanan's narration said, the streets really do make you do shit that you didn't even know you could do. They turn you into someone you don't even recognize, but don't get it twisted, that's all on you, you did that. You can blame the block for your bullshit, but nobody else pulled the trigger.